As far as modes of transport are concerned, civil aviation has been the fastest growing and the most technically innovative of any. From the first attempts at powered manned flight to regular space flight, we have only just exceeded 100 years of aviation. What is incredible is that the first scheduled international air service started in 1919. It's probably no coincidence that the first international conference on civil aviation also took place in 1919 in Paris. Since then, the field of air travel has been subjected to far more international legislation and agreements than any other. The overriding need, which is recognized by all, regardless of political inclination, is for higher and higher safety standards. The degree of international cooperation in this respect is outstanding, and shows that where there is a genuine desire to achieve international agreement, it's forthcoming. The Second World War had a major effect upon technical development of the aircraft, telescoping a quarter of a century of normal peacetime development into 6 years. A vast network of passenger and freight carriage was set up, but there were many problems to which solutions had to be found to benefit and support a world at peace. There was the question of commercial rights. What arrangements would be made for the airlines of one country to fly into and through the territories of another? There were other concerns with regard to the legal and economic conflicts that might come with peacetime flying across national borders, such as how to maintain existing air navigation facilities, many of which were located in sparsely populated areas. For these reasons, the government of the United States conducted exploratory discussions with other Allied nations during the early months of 1944. Subsequently, invitations were sent to 55 Allied and neutral states to meet in Chicago in November 1944. For 5 weeks, the delegates of the 52 nations who attended considered the problems of international civil aviation. The outcome was the Convention on International Civil Aviation, the purpose of which was to foster the future development of international civil aviation, to help to create and preserve friendship and understanding among peoples of the world, so as to prevent its abuse becoming a threat to the general security, thus promoting cooperation between peoples. A permanent body was subsequently charged with the administration of the principles, the International Civil Aviation Organization, known throughout the world by the acronym ICAO. The definitions which follow have to be understood by the student if a full grasp of this subject is to be gained. Sovereignty implies the right of a country or contracting ICAO state to impose its national law on users of the state's territorial airspace. Territory, as defined in international legislation, in aviation terms applies to the airspace existing over the defined limits of a country's territory at ground level and territorial waters. A matter to which the Chicago Conference attached great importance was the question of exchange of commercial rights in international civil aviation. The states addressed the subject, resulting in contracting states agreeing, bilaterally, to grant each other certain rights regarding the commercial exploitation of civil aviation. These rights are now known as the freedoms of the air. However, it's important to remember that the freedoms gave rights to transit the airspace of contracting states to both scheduled and non-scheduled flights. Under international law, the imposition of customs tariffs and the prohibition of the importation of prescribed items is allowed. In order to allow contracting states to maintain national customs and excise regulations, international flights are required to make the first point of landing in a contracting state at a recognized international airport which provides customs, health, and immigration facilities. In the United Kingdom, These are known as customs airports. Within the European Union, the removal of restrictions to free trade now allows flights from one European Union state to another to make the first point of landing at a non-customs aerodrome, providing certain rules are observed. As has just been stated, flights into the United Kingdom from another European Union state meet few formalities and are not required to land at a designated customs airport. For flights arriving in the United Kingdom at a non-customs airport, details of the flight plan and a list of passengers and their nationalities should be advised in advance to the local customs contact point. Any birds or animals on board and any prohibited or restricted goods must be declared to customs. In addition, if it's intended to carry any non-European Union nationals into the United Kingdom, the Immigration Service must be notified in advance. It should also be noted that a PPL is not acceptable as proof of identity. Passports and visas, where required, must also be carried. The aircraft, its fuel, oil, etc. is not liable for excise duty, but other goods may be. It should be borne in mind that, under Article 16 of the Chicago Convention, the authorities of each state shall have the right to search the aircraft of other states on landing or departure, without unreasonable delay, and to inspect certificates and other documents prescribed by the Convention. The ICAO has addressed taxation in the field of international aviation, and member states are required to follow the resolutions and recommendation of the Council in this respect. States are asked to exempt from duty any fuel, lubricants, and other technical consumables taken on board an aircraft in a state other than the state of registry, providing such supplies are for consumption in flight. Each state undertakes to adopt measures to ensure that every aircraft flying over or maneuvering within its territory, and that every aircraft carrying its nationality mark, wherever that aircraft is, will comply with the rules and regulations relating to the flight and maneuver of aircraft that are in force. Each state also undertakes to keep its own regulations in these respects uniform, to the greatest possible extent, with those established from time to time under the Convention. Over the high seas, the rules in force will be those which were established under the Chicago Convention. Furthermore, each state undertakes to ensure the prosecution of all persons violating the applicable regulations. Other duties of member states include the specification of what documentation is required to be carried in an aircraft. Documentation includes certificate of airworthiness, flight crew licenses, load sheets, certificate of registration. A private pilot flying an aircraft registered in the United Kingdom must consult Article 76 and Schedule 11 of the Air Navigation Order to check what documents need to be carried on board the aircraft. For example, a private pilot of a UK-registered aircraft which enters the sovereign airspace of another state shall carry on board his aircraft the certificate of airworthiness, the certificate of registration, radio documentation and licenses, his pilot's license, and a copy of the current interception procedures. Registered aircraft flying over the territory of another state must only carry radios which are licensed and used in accordance with the regulations of the state of registry. The radios may only be used by members of the flight crew who are issued with a license to use those radios by the state of registry. A PPL is a license issued by the state authority, the Civil Aviation Authority for the United Kingdom, which will allow the holder to fly as pilot in command, or co-pilot in any of the types or classes specified in the license, provided the holder's logbook contains a valid type or class rating for that aircraft. In addition, the holder must be 17 years of age and hold a valid medical certificate, Class 1 or 2, issued by an authorized medical examiner. A PPL holder may not fly for the purposes of public transport or aerial work except as follows: instruction in flying, conducting flying tests for the purposes of the order, the towing of a glider, dropping parachutists. In each case, the aircraft must be owned or operated under arrangements entered into by a club of which both the holder and the person or persons being instructed, tested, towed, or dropped are members. ICAO standards and recommended practices, SARPs, require each state to apply standardization in the licensing of personnel involved in international aviation. The overriding purpose of standardization is to ensure that all involved in air transport operations are licensed to common standards and able to operate throughout the world, thus generating greater trust in aviation on the part of the traveller. Each state undertakes to collaborate in securing the highest practicable degree of uniformity in regulations, standards, procedures, and in organization in relation to airspace, aircraft, personnel, and auxiliary services, in which uniformity will facilitate and improve air navigation. A journey logbook shall be maintained for every aircraft engaged in international navigation. Particulars of the aircraft, its crew, and of each journey must be entered in the journey logbook, including occurrences that require recording. No munitions or implements of war may be carried in or above the territory of a state in aircraft engaged in international navigation, unless that state has given its permission. Each state may prohibit or regulate the use of photographic apparatus in aircraft over its territory. Any person holding a license who does not fully satisfy the conditions laid down in the international standard relating to the class of license or certificate which he holds shall have either endorsed on or attached to his license complete particulars of why he does not satisfy those conditions. No aircraft or personnel who have endorsed certificates or licenses may participate in international navigation, except with the permission of the state or states whose territory is entered. The registration or use of any such aircraft or aircraft part in any state other than that in which it was originally certificated shall be at the discretion of the state into which the aircraft or part is imported.